get started on this project, you should have downloaded the website Mockup folder. Inside of it, there are a variety of different resources that I'm giving to you. The gist of this project is twofold. First off, you're going to edit some camera raw photos. At least 6 of these need to be used somewhere in your design. You can use more, but at least 6 need to be incorporated somehow. So the first thing we need to do is to edit these camera raw photos. Later on, we're going to choose one of these website templates to create and generate our own mock-up of a website, and we're going to place those pictures inside of the placeholder areas. In addition to this, I'm giving you a bunch of extra photos that you could use anywhere in your design, as well as the company logo that needs to be incorporated. Notice that this company logo comes in a variety of different colors, and so you can use those colors as a starting point, or you can design it however you wish. Let's start off by editing our camera raw photos. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can go about editing and changing these up. Some of these may need more work than others, but each one of them has its own unique little features. And I'm going to show you a couple of things to think about, maybe even some artistic stuff that you could incorporate into your design. I'm going to start off working with this one. We'll open it up into Photoshop. You can simply drag it on, or you can go up to File and open it directly into the Camera Raw editor. Now, as we've learned in this unit, the first thing we need to do is to start playing around with the different profile and automatic settings. One of the things that I like to do is to change my profile to be something more appropriate. So in this case, since I'm working on a landscape, I'll choose Adobe Landscape, and that'll brighten up some of the more natural colors. The other thing I can do is to enable Auto, and that will automatically choose what it thinks is the appropriate light and dark balance for the overall design. This way you can really see some of the details in the shadows. From here, I open up my light drop-down and be able to play around with this. Again, it depends on what you want to do with yours, so there's no one particular setting. But if I see that I need more detail in the dark areas, maybe I can play around with the blacks and the shadows to be able to pull up a little bit more detail from there as well. Adjusting the exposure, we don't want it to blow out, and we certainly don't want it to get any darker, so maybe I'll keep it right about where it was at. Some other things you can do is to open up the color panel and change your white balance. Remember, white balance should have whatever it thinks is the lightest point on your photograph be the lightest part. You could set it to be auto, and it will automatically adjust it, or you can click on your little eyedropper and select where it thinks it should be as well too. Finally, under color, if you think that it has a bit of an overcast either of one particular temperature, whether it's too warm or too cool, you can readjust it based on here. I think this is a little bit too warm, so I'm going to pull the temperature down just a bit. Playing around with the saturation can make it more or less gray. Same way with vibrance, so I'm going to pull that up. The final thing I'm going to do is to zoom in and check out some of the small details on this. Especially when you have a really dark image, you tend to get a lot of pixelation and noise within the area. You can really see it along the details of the person. To reduce this amount of noise, the book didn't go over to it, but you can open up your details and you can tell it to sharpen it, or you can tell it to reduce the noise. So I'm going to denoise it. This may take just a little bit of time, but it's going to open up a separate little editor, and you can see how it starts to remove the amount of denoising. So there it was before, all the little pixels, and then after, it really smooths that out. I'm going to choose Enhance. Again, this kind of enhancement does take a little bit of time, so let's wait a bit, and it will actually create a separate DNG file in order to edit these. All right, once the denoise is finished, I think this one's good to go. In order to save this so that we can use it, the first thing I need to do is to be able to export it as a JPEG. I'm going to go up to the very top and choose Convert and Save. From here, I'll save it in the same location, and I'm simply going to let this be a JPEG format. We'll keep it as a nice high quality or even maximum quality size to work from. Everything else is going to remain exactly the same. Do make sure not to resize it if you have this turned on. We're going to keep it the typical setting for what we're working with. When I hit save, this will save a JPEG version of what we were working on. And then finally, Since I don't want to open this up in Photoshop, I'm going to click Done to close it out. Remember, whenever you edit your photographs in the Camera Raw editor, it's going to save an XMP file. This XMP file is what you also need to upload to the class page as part of your project file. Let's do some more edits. I'll open up this lady. Now this photograph by itself is actually pretty good. There's not a lot of lighting problems with it. There are some little things that I could do, like remove blemishes and maybe even smooth out her skin. So let's work through that. In order to do this, we need to be able to select the area that we want to affect. So I'm going to go into my masking mode, and I'm actually going to use my remove filter to do this. In order to create one, we're going to click and drag over the area that we want to affect. So maybe move just a couple of blemishes. And then over here, I can tell it to remove. This will take just a moment, but it's going to use AI to try to fill in that area with what it thinks is best. All right, now it's done. Some other things we can do is maybe enhance the color of her eyes. In order to select the area of the eyes, let's go into our mask mode. We could individually use a brush and brush on the area, or we can tell it to select the subject. Notice that it recognizes her as a person. We'll give it just a second to recognize the different parts. So it recognizes the facial skin, the eyebrows, the eye itself, even the iris and the pupil. So I'm going to select just those and create a mask for the iris and the pupil. With that selected, let's see what we can do to enhance it. I'm going to turn off my overlay, go over to my options. I can make them brighter. I can go down to their color and temperature, and I can tint them a certain color. I can even change the hue and saturation of them and make them a different color altogether. Nothing says you can't do this, but maybe I just want to bump up the saturation a bit more and keep it there. Now her eyes look like a nice bright blue. If I wanted to see a before and after, remember you can turn on and off visibility of that mask and see what it would look like. Let's smooth out her skin. We'll go back up to Create Mask. One more time, we're going to select the people. I've already got her selected. Let's do the facial skin selection and create a mask for it. With her skin selected, we can go over to our presets. Let's go down to the effects. I'm going to turn off visibility of the overlay, and let's bring down some of the clarity. Doing this will soften the edges of her skin and make her look a lot more smooth-skinned. Now, we don't want to go so much that she looks like plastic, so we do want to kind of back it off just a bit. That's looking really good. Once we're done with the masking and changes that we want for the face, we can go back to our regular editor, and let's back out. I do see one little area that maybe I want to touch up. I see she's got a little blemish on her hand. In order to fix that, that's a simple fix with our remove tool. Once again, we can click and drag over the area. Maybe I'll get this little part right here too, and say remove. And there it is. One final edit that the book didn't go into is maybe we can add a little bit of a dark vignette around our subject. In order to create this, make sure you're in the regular editing mode, and let's go down to the effects, and let's add a vignette effect. Clicking and adding this adds a little bit of a darker edge around your entire subject. Now you can go really dark or you can keep it super subtle, but adding this darker edge kind of draws your attention up into her face. Finally, you can play around with the settings of this, making it more or less. But once you get something that you like, remember we need to save this as a JPEG. Make sure it's in the same location. JPEG is what we're working for at a high quality, and we're not resizing our image. We'll do save. And when we're finished, we'll click done. This should give us another JPEG as well as an XMP file. Let's do one more and see if we can do some special effects with it. I'm going to drag this into Photoshop. As I've done with all the others, let's go up to Edit and Auto Color Correct and also auto set the profile for one or the other. I realized I didn't do it for the last one, but it was actually pretty good. So this one looks really good as far as the lighting and contrast goes. I can always play around with the light and maybe add a little bit more contrast, punch up the colors, maybe make the darks a little bit darker from there, but that's actually going pretty well. Some other things you can play around with are the color grading and the color mixing. This allows you to take certain colors and hues and be able to tweak just those hues. For instance, if I wanted, say, the reds on this, I can choose the color red and I can make it slightly more or less saturated. Or I can choose the green of the trees in the background. I can make those more or less saturated or tint them a different color as well. I'm going to make them a little bit more golden. If I wanted to have an overall shadow or an overall cast of color over this, open the color grading sections. This allows you to add a slight tinge of color to the shadows, midtones, and highlights of your design. So if I wanted my shadows to, say, have a little bit more of a red tinge to them, I can pull this over to red, and then I can adjust how much red I want to be in those dark shadows. This adds a little bit of a vintage style and feel, and depending on how you want your design to look, it adds a cool little effect. Maybe we'll pull this one over here and add a little bit more. Let's do less blue. We'll go for this for here. Now that it has a different kind of look and feel, I can save this up. And we'll click Done once it's finished. I said that was the last one, but I think of one more technique that we could try for any one of these. If you wanted to convert an image to black and white, let's do it for this little kitty cat. The cat looks really good. I can set my profile to be whatever I want it to be, but under the Edit menu, choose Black and White, B&W, to automatically set it to be a black and white photograph. Now that we're working just in monochrome, we can open up our light and we can adjust the exposure and contrast and highlights for this. This is where you really want to pull out all the details and have a good looking highlights and shadows to see all of his fur. Now, it does say things about color, and you can do things like add effects like a vignette or add a little bit more texture to him. Now he's really popping out. Or you can even add a color grading overlay. So if you didn't want it to be true black and white, but if you wanted to add a little bit of color to it, that's one other thing you can do. Maybe for this one, I'm going to keep it exactly just a true black and white. Again, save it up as a JPEG, and finally hit Done so that you get all of the files that you need. Remember, we need to have at least 6 of these edited so that you can incorporate it into your design, whichever 6 that you want, or you can do all of them and place them somehow in your overall final design. Take some time now and go through each of the different ones, editing and saving them as needed.